It is not possible to learn language without using it. Just like it is not possible to get strong and fit without using your muscles. In a fitness studio, you move from machine to machine or from exercise to exercise, working on different muscles or groups of muscles. In this language fitness studio, you will be writing and speaking sentences as you work on more and more complex language technology. Getting strong and fit is a question of working on the right muscles for the right amount of time in the right order. To reach the goal, you need to find out how long to train which parts of your body in which order. The questions to ask when learning a language is, how many correct sentences do I have to make, write, read, and use with new words and language technology until I can use them without having to think about them? Being fit in a language means being able to speak and write without having to think about it. A fitness instructor sets up an exercise program so that you work on the right muscles in the right order for the right amount of time. As your language instructor, I have created a program so that you work on the right technology in the right order for the right amount of time. This program will take you from the simple to the complex, and from sentences to using them to build relationships and achieve communication goals. One way to approach this course is as a series of things to understand. That is, to approach it as a theoretical exercise. But language learning is not a theoretical exercise. Most of the things worth knowing were learned by doing. Language learning is no exception. You learned your mother tongue as a child by doing and not by memorizing abstract concepts and rules. You learned it from the bottom up as a cycle of watching and listening, imitating and experimenting. As an adult, things are different, but not so different. The advantage of being an adult is that you can recognize and talk about patterns and abstract concepts. The disadvantage is that you do not have 3 to 4 years to dedicate to learning English every day like a child. The trick to making adult language learning as easy as possible is to use your adult advantage to compensate for the lack of time. The first step in making this happen is to break language learning down into manageable pieces that can be practiced one at a time before learning how to combine them. Just like learning to swim is broken down into easy, isolated leg, arm, and breathing exercises before combining them into the breast, crawl, and butterfly strokes. But no matter how swimming or language learning is broken down, you have to learn the parts and their combination by doing. One of the most difficult things about learning a new language is that language happens all at once. As soon as you read, hear, or are asked to speak in a new language, all the complexity is there at once. Words that you do not understand, patterns that make no sense, language technology that feels random and overwhelming, and sounds that sound more like a soup than a series of clear words. In this way, too, language learning is like swimming. It is almost impossible to learn how to swim if you focus on all the body parts and your breathing at the same time. It is just as impossible to learn a language when your brain is overheated trying to pay attention to all the technology and all the vocabulary at the same time. To break language down into manageable parts, we have to prioritize form over content. The technologies for building sentences are much harder to understand and learn if you are focused on vocabulary. Language technology stays the same, no matter what you are talking about. That is, no matter the vocabulary you use. When you can recognize and apply a technology, you can use it to talk about anything. Think of the technology as the form and vocabulary as the content. Or, in other words, The set of technologies is the motor, and your vocabulary is the gasoline. We need to start with the form. We need to first build the motor using a limited number of words before adding in more and more vocabulary. To build the motor, we need to make sure that the descriptions of the technology are easy to understand and use. Languages are usually taught using names for language technology created by linguists for linguists. These names were not created to help people learn a language. They were created by and for the people who study language for a living. Most people who learn a language are not studying language for a living. That is why these names for language technologies often get in the way of learning a language. For example, in German, a name for a German language technology is the Plusquamperfekt. Very few speakers of German know what this means or can give you an example. Even less can tell you why it is called perfect, what quam means, or what the plus has to do with it. An English example is the progressive or continuous tense. Few English speakers can tell you what progressive means and what it has to do with adding the ending eng to a verb. In fact, thinking of this technology as progressive or continuous makes it almost impossible to understand or use. And the whole idea of tense as a confusing word for time makes people tense. And being tense is not a good state for language learning. The result of this disconnect between the names of language technology and their use is that learners get stuck trying to understand the names, have a vague feeling that language learning is way too complicated, and become afraid of making mistakes. In this course, the names for the technologies describe what they help you do. For example, the when is the technology to communicate position in time. Concepts that say exactly what they mean are easier to understand and practice than concepts that short-circuit your common sense and make you scream, "Ah!" Once we have easy to understand names for the English language technology, we must make sure that we follow the right path from one technology to the next. There are many paths through this course. You could jump from one thing to the next, forwards and then backwards, and then back again. But each technology builds on the one before. It makes no sense to work on the moving pictures technology before you have mastered the when technology. In fact, there is a high chance that doing so will cause confusion. That is why I highly recommend going through the course one section, one lesson at a time, at the speed that you need to master each step. Of course, you can skip a technology if you already know it so well that you can use it without thinking about it. But watch out. Our fitness studio exercises get more complicated as we go. It is a little bit like when I was learning math in school. In September, everything was fine. Math was easy. By October, I had to do a little bit of homework, once in a while. By November, things started to get more difficult, but not enough to choose math over playing outside. By December, I often had no idea what was going on because I did not spend enough time mastering the easy pieces in September and October that were necessary to understand what was being taught in November and December. Going step by step means focusing on one step and not worrying about the next steps. That means that when learning a language, you need to be able to bear the gaps. German has a wonderful expression for this, Mut zur Lücke. It means something like courage in the face of gaps. It is not possible to teach every word and every technology in one course. That would make the course way too long. It is also not possible to teach all the vocabulary and technology in a course at the same time. That would be confusing and would cause overload. There will be things that you already know or that you would like to know that are not covered in this course. And there will be things that you want to learn before we get to that content. These are the gaps that you have to courageously accept. In this course, for example, to get really good at the who or what technology, we have to isolate that as much as possible from all the other technology that can get in the way. That does not mean that it is not there. It is. You may already know sentences with the who or what technology that include many other pieces of technology. Your impulse will be to ask, can I also say? And then say a more complicated sentence that you have read or already use. Usually the answer is yes, but not now. You need to trust my path through the course. It's not the only path, and it is perhaps not even the best path. But it is a path, and a path is better than no path. So let's get going. Let's get into the language pool. Let's get into the Language Fitness Studio to get language fit. See you in the next lesson.